Welcome to the Level Up with Josh Pratt podcast, where you're invited to learn from my remarkable guest and lead a purpose-driven life. All right, everyone, I want to welcome you to the Level Up podcast here with me, your host, Josh Pratt. I have got the one and only Justin Prince here. He was kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule to meet with us. And so we're excited to have Justin on the show today. Justin, how you doing?
Man, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be on with you.
You're a stud. No, seriously, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. So guys, Justin Prince here, he has shared the stage with some of the world's most influential leaders. He has presented in over 20 different countries, maybe more than that now. And he has amassed over about $2.5 billion in sales from his different companies. So we're going to kind of dive into a little bit about his story, how he got his start. And without further ado, Justin, do you want to kind of just give those that aren't familiar with your story a little brief background about who you are and kind of how your journey got ramped up to where it is today?
Yeah. So I came from Salt Lake City, Utah. I came from kind of a middle-class family. My folks got divorced when I was 12, and we moved 13 times in the 7 years into the kind of teenage years. And I have really no professional background. I was making pizzas and I was doing construction work. I worked at a mall kiosk selling Bible videos out of a mall kiosk. And so I also have no college education. I have a semester and a half of college. So the deck kind of would have been maybe stacked against me a little bit with some of those things. But what I did have is I had a lot of big dreams and big goals and a lot of ambition and a lot of desire to, make something of my life. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to that. When I was 25, I started my first business. I worked with this distributing a nutritional product, and the company that was the kind of parent company went out of business. Mm-hmm. So when that happened, I was below zero financially, back on credit cards, back on taxes, and is kind of in a precarious financial situation. I remember at one point I moved my pregnant wife and our two kids into the loft above my wife's parents' garage. So I have two kids sleeping in the loft or in the closet. My wife and I sleep in this little loft area. I have now two part-time jobs. One I do in the weekday, one I do on the weekend. I have no college education. I have no professional background really. And I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, I remember saying to myself in 1 a.m, I say out loud to my wife, it's 1 a.m. We're laying there in bed. It's pitch black. I go, are you awake? And she goes, yeah. She goes, you awake? I said, yeah. I said, honey, am I crazy? Like, am I chasing a fake dream? Like, is this ever going to happen for us? And my guess is some of you listening, you can relate to this concept of like, it's possible for other people to succeed. You just don't know if it's possible for you to succeed or for you to actually go pull it off. That's kind of, the questions I was asking.
Yeah. That self-doubt creeps in. I'm just kind of smiling here because I'm thinking like, I'm sure your in-laws are great, but they're probably thinking at that time, oh man, Justin, what's he going to do? Doesn't have this education. And anyway, I doubt they were bad mouthing you, but there's those people that doubt. Right. And
for sure. I mean, listen, it's pretty humbling when you're 27 to move back there, you take in this case, their grandkids. You're like, gosh, dang it. This is not how I designed this plan to work.
Yeah.
I got enough courage to start another business, and I thought I was just going to crank on this thing. It took me a couple of years to get to a point where it was a full-time business, drop the one part-time job, drop the second part-time job. And eventually in that business, I started to really succeed. I started speaking all over the world with that company. I started to really kind of put some points on the board. I ended up selling that business when I was 29, and I did private equity consulting for 2 years. I started on a project when I was 32. We took over an existing company. It was a 25-year-old company. 8 years in a row of double-digit decline in revenue. It was going the wrong direction. Yeah. And I came in originally as a consultant and then ultimately as an equity partner. And then I led distribution and leadership development, team building, sales, marketing, the whole thing in the field. And we created an idea that I remember thinking to myself, Mike, this is like $1 billion idea. Like this concept's like $1 billion idea. And I was actually wrong. It wasn't $1 billion idea. It was a $2.5 billion idea, So I did that for the next 11 years. And that was kind of a life-changing journey,
So it sounds like you kind of like went on this like, massive rise pretty quick. Was that the case, or was there? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like it's like a 10-year overnight success kind of thing. But What I would share with you is this. There's really two strategies that I teach. One is to bloom where you're planted. So bloom where you're planted means no matter what you're doing right now. I spoke at a local university earlier this week. And I said to the kids, it was an entrepreneur class. I said, what do you guys do for work right now? The one kid's like, I work at Subway. Someone else worked at the bank. Someone else is basically like an underling, working in an accounting office. Someone else was a nanny. So they kind of shot out their different things. And I said, you want to bloom where you're planted, which means you want to become the very best that you can be doing what you're doing. You want to always do more than you're paid for as an investment in your future. Always is a big word. That's not sometimes or occasionally. That's always. And you don't do what you're paid for. Most people do less than they're paid for.
That's true.
Some people do what they're paid for. You want to do more than you're paid for. Why? As an investment in your future, as an investment in the person that you're becoming. And so I did that. I just kind of bloomed where I was planted. Like I just kind of started stringing wins together, even though the wins were small. It was small when I did construction, but man, I worked hard at construction. It was small when I did pizza, but man, I actually really cared and worked my butt off. When I did the Bible sales job, I was the top guy that it had in 28-year history of the company. And I share that not to boast or brag. I just share that to say, I was trying my best to like excel at everything I did. Even though the vehicle was small, I was still trying to maximize the opportunity, right? Yeah. There's an old saying that says it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Another way to say it is it's better to be prepared and not have opportunity than have opportunity and not be prepared. You want to like bloom where you're planted, because that leads to a second thing, which is you start stringing wins together. Sure. And even though that business failed, I was succeeding at that business prior to it failing. So in other words, like things started to move on the tick up. Now, when it failed, it left me in a precarious financial situation for sure. But you start stringing some wins together, and like the one leads you to the next, because the success principles are all tied together. And that's kind of what's happened with our, the business I built for the last 11 years. So that led to my book. I just finished a book called Be the One. And the concept of the book for me is really two parts. One is this idea of the one, that you are the one. So think of it this way. If you take your parents, and by the way, think of your folks, right? You think your mom, think of your dad, the love you have for them. You take your grandparents, your great grandparents, those of you that knew them. Over the last 12 generations, it was 4,094 people. So think of this, 4,094 people, about 400 years.
I've seen that. I've seen that on Facebook. I love that concept. Please. Yeah.
That came together to create you. You are the one. You're the one that these folks lived for, bled for, cried for, died for. They gave everything they had so that you would have this moment. You are the one. Your life has value and purpose and meaning. You are the one. The second part is to be. So it's not become the one, it's be the one. Be the one means you already are the one. So go be that one today, because I tell people you're not who you are who you were born to be. You are your potential. And so you start stepping into it. So the book for me was not meant to just inspire and motivate. I hope it does that. But what it's really meant to do is to teach the principles, the formulas, the frameworks, the tactical, practical steps that you need to do to literally go be the one today.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So when was like the point in your career? Because I know my career in real estate, there came a time where I was like, I don't think I'm going to have to go back to digging ditches. I don't think I'm going to have to haul junk, like there came a time, probably about 5 years ago, a couple of years into my real estate career, where I was like, this is it. When was that for you? Like, when was the moment where you're like, I'm not selling Bible, scripture stuff, and I'm not.
It's such an interesting question. So I've actually never told this either on a stage or on a podcast. I had 2 part-time jobs, and I was trying to, pull myself out of this kind of financial challenge. I started building my business. And I remember where I got to a point where the business could basically sustain getting rid of one of the jobs, because I worked all weekday on the one, all weekends on the other. And then I remember I got to a point where I was like, I think the business can sustain getting rid of the second job. And dude, it's the craziest thing. I went to a trash can in a parking lot, like one of those big kind of dumpsters in a parking lot. And I took out my sales bag for this Bible sales job. And I literally had because we had like a little flip chart. I ripped out each page and threw it in the thing, and just whoosh, threw it almost like ceremoniously.
You were turning the page.
Yeah, it was just one of those things of like, you know what? As grateful as I was for that job, and as much as it helped me, and as it, it pulled me through those times. So in other words, I had a lot of gratitude, but I was so done with that time of my life. I was so done with that job. I was just like, I'm never going back. I'm never going back to that, because it was a little bit of an anchor or a crutch to keep going back to this Bible sales job.
Hmm.
And I share that with you to say, some of you right now are like, you have something you're doing that you hate. You literally just like, you cannot wait to not do this anymore, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And for me, I was so done. And I remember that literally that night, and I was still kind of teetering. It wasn't like I wasn't such a huge success. I was like, I'll never need this. I was still like, oh, I may still need it, but I just ripped it off. Like, I'm never going back.
Yeah.
And I've never had to go back to that type of work since, right? It's just kind of the progressions continued in the upward trajectory.
No, that's a cool story where you're like not sure where it's going to go exactly, but you're pretty confident. And then I mean, it was a statement, right? Like there's this declaration where you're throwing this away, right? And you're not going back. That's pretty
right.
cool. Okay, so I actually got a few questions from people that are familiar with you, and I wanted to just share a couple of those, and
Of course.
we'll just kind of go from there. All right, so Eli Bowman, he lives in Ohio. He asked um, how you would amass a fortune if you were to begin on January 1st, 2024, with only $1,000 to invest.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's 3 steps to wealth building. A billionaire mentor of mine taught me these. They completely changed my life. Now, listen, these are very simplistic, but remember, true genius is simplicity. So in other words, you can make things more complex. It takes a genius to make complex things simple. And what I'm going to share with you is simple, but this is the formula, 3 steps. Step 1 is maximize income. You want to maximize your income. So what I would say, Eli, is you want to make as much money as you possibly can doing what you're doing. And then the second thing is you want to build your skill sets and the value that you're bringing to the marketplace to get your income line to the trajectory of your line to start ticking up. So if you're making 50 grand, we got to learn how to make 55. If you're making 63, we need to learn how to make 70. If we're making 70, we need to learn how to get to a point where you're at 6 figures. If you're at 6 figures, let's get you to 150, 200. Like the point is the income line needs to tick up. The reason why is most people at age 18, let's just say they enter the workforce, their lines will tick up like this to maybe 25, maybe 30, and then it just kind of levels off. They're a nurse, they're a plumber, they're a chiropractor. They just kind of make what they make, right? They're a teacher, firefighter. You want to get to a point where your income line ticks up. You start making more. You maximize your income. Make as much as you maximize, make as much as you can. Why is that so important? Because the most valuable asset that you'll ever create is you. The best investment you'll ever make is an investment in yourself. You're investing in your ability to generate cash to maximize income. Best thing you'll ever do, best investment you ever make is all these investments you're making into your mind, into your skill sets and your capacity. That leads to step 2, which is to minimize expense. So you want to maximize income and then minimize expense. What happens for most people is when they make $1, they spend $1. So if they make 60, they spend 60. If they make 160, they may spend 160. What you want to do is have the income line tick up and the expense line tick down. And I teach strategies on how to do this, where you start to create. I had a buddy of mine. He sat down with me. He had amassed $100,000, it's like 99,000, something and change, $100,000 of consumer debt. He's a couple of years younger than me. He was just so stressed out. He was so like ashamed of himself. He's like, gosh, dang it. I had credit card debts and just the different things. And he just is like, dude, I'm screwed. No one had ever taught him any wealth building principles. He came from a family where his brothers, his sisters were all in and out of prison. He came through the foster home system.
Wow.
He had no principles at all. And we sat down and we laid out a plan. In 1 year, it's been 1 year now. Maybe it's a little bit over a year now. Maybe we're 15 months in, but he's now knocked out that debt. I kind of laid out some strategies for him to be able to do it, which is, he sent me a text a couple of days ago on how he did it. I told him, I said, Ray, 10 years from now, you'll be a millionaire. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this debt pressure that you're feeling. I'm going to teach you how to minimize that. And then we're going to turn that into step 3, which step 3 is to build assets, build cash flowing assets. So you maximize, minimize, and then you build. 3 steps: maximize, minimize, build. So you maximize your income, minimize your expense, and then build assets. Now, assets, a simple way to think about those is they're things that generate cash for you. In other words, they pay you whether you continue to exchange time or money, or time or effort. They continue to generate cash for you. So Jim Rohn said, have one bike to ride and one bike to rent. The bike to rent.
Love Jim Rohn.
Yeah. And so you want to build cash flowing assets. And the power of this is that they will pay you. An asset can pay you even when you're not, working on the asset, right? You're not exchanging time or effort. Two ways to build assets. One is you invest money, put money to work for you. Second way is you build businesses and you put people to work for you.
Yeah.
And so Eli, going back, what I would do, 2024, right? January 1st, you have $1,000 to invest. Just to speak to you just straight, $1,000 isn't very much, right? What do we need to do? We need to maximize your income. We need to get better at what you do. We need to become the very best at what you do. We need to look for better opportunities and maximize your ability to generate cash. We need your income line to increase over the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Two, we need to make sure we build a plan to where we're not just spending everything we make. We need to create a gap between income and expense. And then the gap we're going to use to do step 3, which is to start building cash flowing assets to where your assets pay for your lifestyle. That's when you're free, is when you're making more money from your, residual asset building than you are from your, than the expenses that you have. And at that point, you're good to go.
Okay. On that topic. So actually, just last week, I returned from a trip from Costa Rica. We were looking at some properties to purchase and build a hotel down there. Right. And I'm throwing this idea out to someone that I care about, think very highly of, and they're just like shooting this idea down. They're like, oh, like, you don't know Costa Rica, like, law down there. I'm like, well, we've got these contacts down there, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we're like going kind of back and forth. And I just wanted to ask you, like in your career, like when you were getting your start and you were throwing out big dreams, did you have the haters? And if you did, did you silence them? Did you separate yourself from them, or how did that work out for you?
Yeah. So the haters don't go away, dude. The haters are always there. So regardless of how successful or unsuccessful you are. So a couple
I love
quick
that. Haters don't go away. The
haters are going to hate. So a couple quick things I'd share with you. Number one, I've spoken all over the world. So when I speak in Asia, there's an old Asian proverb that says that the nail that sticks up shall be hammered down. So the nail on the board that sticks up, someone's going to come and hammer it down. In the UK and throughout Australia, they talk about the tall poppy syndrome. The poppy flower that grows up, they say, how dare you? And they slice it down. And then in the back east of the United States, if they have a crab in a bucket and the crab's trying to crawl out of the bucket, guess what they do? They put another crab in. Why? You'd think the second crab would kind of hoist it up and lift it out. No. The crabs pull it down, right? Ooh. So if you go for your dreams, you try and stand out, you try and make things happen, you try and be the one in your life, you will be hammered, sliced, and pulled down. It's the nature of how humans work. Now you say, why do they work that way? I don't know. It's just how humans work. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'd share with you is this. When you get hammered and sliced and pulled, there's really, it hurts. Like, it's painful sometimes. So what you want to do is what I call convert the hurt. So you convert it from pain to fuel. You don't ignore the hurt. You don't act like it's not real. You don't act like you're too tough for it. No. You convert it from pain to fuel. What does that mean? A solar panel, the sun has like solar energy. It goes through a solar panel. What the solar panel does is it converts it from solar energy to electrical energy. Goes through a conversion process. A wind turbine does the same thing. A water turbine does the same thing. The point is, you can take all this pain that you feel, and instead of letting it destroy your future, you let it drive your future. You say, I'm going to go through a conversion process from pain to fuel. I'll let it fuel my success. I'll let it fuel my future. Like, I'm going to go make things happen because that happens. So that's the one thing. The second thing I'd share is this. You want to give more weight to the words of those that believe in you versus the words that those that don't. So I'll give you an example. If a 3-year-old walks up to you and says, you're stupid and you're going to fail, you'd be like, all right, dude, whatever. Like, you'd be like, go find your mom. If a 33-year-old walks up to you and says you're stupid and you're going to fail, all of a sudden it's the same words. They were neutral, but we gave more weight to the words of the 33-year-old, even though the words themselves were the same than the weight we gave to the 3-year-old. If you do a social media post, you have 18 comments and 17 of them say, hey, great post. Thanks so much. Keep going. And then the one post says you're an idiot and you're, why'd you even post this? That's the one we stew on. We click on their profile. Who do they think they are to even talk to us like this? We want to respond and so on. My friends, why did you not give more weight to the 17 that believed in you versus the one that didn't? We have this tendency. So what I would share is give more weight to the words of those that believe in you versus those that don't. A friend of mine sat next to former 2-time President Ronald Reagan at a national charity awards dinner in DC. And as they're sitting there, it goes the podium, then Reagan, then my buddy, and then everyone else is in the round tables having dinner at this charity dinner. And my friend says to President Reagan, he says, President Reagan, how did you become the 2-time president of the United States? And Reagan says, it's interesting. When I was a young boy, I wanted to play football. And I told some friends I wanted to play football. And the friends laughed and they go, Ron, you're going to get killed out there. You're just a little guy. You're just a little runt. And he said, I ultimately played high school football. He said, I listened to those who believed in me and I listened to those who told me that I could. He said, when I was a high school football player, I told some friends, I want to become a famous actor, like move to Hollywood and become a famous actor. They said, Ron, what do you know about acting, dude? You're a football player. He ultimately became a famous actor. He said, I listened to those who believed in me and I listened to those who told me that I could. He said, when I was an actor, I told some friends, I want to become the governor of the state of California. And they're like, Ron, with all due respect, what do you know about being a governor? Like you're an actor. He ultimately became a governor of the state of California. He said, I listened to those who believed in me and I listened to those who told me that I could. And he said, when I was a governor, I told some people, I want to become the president of the United States of America. And they're like, Ron, you're a governor, dude. What do you know about being a president? He ultimately became a 2-term president of the United States. He said, because I listened to those who believed in me and I listened to those who told me that I could. And my friends, give more weight to the words of those that are like, yo, you got this, than the weight that you're giving to those that tell you that you can't do it.
For sure. For sure. No, I'm excited. That kind of, I take that hurt and I do try and convert it. I love that phrase, that saying. You just really prove the haters wrong. What more can you do than just go out and show them, right? All right, we're gonna go back to a couple other questions here. This is a good one. This might give you an opportunity to kind of share about what your other things that you're passionate about. Heather Thompson Harward, she says, what kind of charity work is he doing with his millions? How is he making the world better with the wealth he has been blessed with? So I'm sure you've been giving back and we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. So a couple of things that we like to do. I teach a rule called the rule of 33. The rule of 33 basically says, take 33% of your time intentionally and focus on getting around people that are better than you. You know what I'm saying? Like they're living the life higher than you. They aspire you to think bigger, to dream bigger, to be bigger. Like they're further down the path than you are. Spend 33% of your time with people basically your size. They can motivate you. You can collaborate with them. They can also hold you accountable. So they're people that are basically playing the game the size that you are. And then 33% of your time with people that are maybe you inspire them. Maybe they're coming up the path. Maybe they're a little bit below you. Maybe they make less. Maybe they've been married less time than you have. Maybe you have some insights that can lift them. And so like one of the things I like to do is once a month in my local community, we do what we call the Decades in Today's Teenage Mastermind. And so I'll bring successful local entrepreneurs over to my home, and I have all these teenagers, all these kids. They're from basically ages 13 to 18. We had 2 11-year-olds this last time that came in. There's no phones. No one can use their phones. And they all bring notebooks. We all take notes. We have a group chat after where everyone shares all their takeaways. They can support each other. And what we do with this Decades in Today's is we're taking what took all of us, these people in our community, decades to learn, and we're teaching it in days to these kids. And so for me, that's an intentional 33% of the time that I'm teaching in this case, the next generation, right? And guess who gets the most out of this, my friends? I do, right?
Yeah.
When you serve other people, service to many leads to greatness. When you add value to other people, that's how you actually pull. So, this next time we're doing it, we have our Decades in a Day's mastermind, and then we're doing we have a big Sub for Santa that we're doing. We do this every year. And I go to like my Instagram and social media, and people donate, and then all the kids bring money and all their parents can donate, whatever. And this year we're helping some single women, single moms, specifically. I was raised by a single mom. And so it's just things like that. Like what would that have been? It would have been 2020. It would have been the December of 2020. We did a Sub for Santa, but what we did is we did it for an orphanage in the Bahamas. And we bought them all like laptops and all this new stuff. And these kids were so on Christmas morning, I took my wife and our kids to this orphan. That's where we spent Christmas morning.
Where is this
under
located?
the tree. It's in the Bahamas.
Okay, cool.
And we played with the kids. We gave them new laptops. We kind of walked them through their new outfits and stuff. And it's just those times that you can actually remind your kids, as Tony Robbins says, and he's so right, that the secret to living is giving. If you want to be the hero to your family, the hero to your business, the hero to your church. Like if you want to be the hero, the word hero comes from the Latin, which is the word servo. The servo is the servant. So instead of being like the one that everyone carries up like they would a pharaoh. They carry you on their shoulders and you're the greatest. No, no, no. The hero is actually the greatest among you, is actually the one that serves the most people and adds the most value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you talk about the greatest among us, right? And you think of the Savior and, how he's washing the feet of the disciples.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe with that, on that note, actually two things. So you mentioned the Toys for Tots and Sub for Santa. Here's a little plug for all those in the Maryland, DC area. I'm doing a drive. So if you want to donate, hit me up. But spirituality, what role does spirituality play in your life? There's a quote that I really like. It's that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but that we are actually spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah. So listen, here's what I would share with you. Your body your life is made up of a couple components, right? You have your physical, you got to take care of yourself. You have your emotional, you got to make sure your emotional health's, strong and healthy. You have your intellectual, like, is your mind stimulated? You have your financial, you got to make sure you get your stuff in order. And then you have your spiritual, right? So your spiritual is you have this spirit. And so a lot of people, you can have whatever faith or religion works for you. But the point I'm saying is, don't neglect this. Don't neglect this. Like, I look back at my journey and all of the glory goes to God. All the credit goes to God. Like, you want to create what I call God-sized goals. God-sized goals are the kind of goals that people look at later and they're like, well, there's no way you did that by yourself because the goal was too big. The dream was too big. That's absolutely what's happened in my life. No question.
Yeah.
And that's a way to think about it is, am I dreaming dreams, number one? And then are these dreams that are big enough that they don't just require my effort? Like, I'm going to need some providence and some blessing to step in. And as I look back, and by the way, let me say this: you want to dream like it's all up to you, and you want to work, or you want to dream like it's all up to God, and you want to work like it's all up to you. So don't misunderstand the process. There's only 3 stages to the process. There's dream, struggle, victory, and they're all the same size. So if you have a big dream, you've set yourself up for a struggle equal to or commensurate to the size of the dream, and a victory equal to the size of the struggle. So they're equal. What we want in life is big dreams, super small struggles, big, huge victories. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
So if you're in the struggle section, remember, you signed up, because of the dream, but the promises of the victory. And so you want to move through this section
for sure. Yeah.
So that's kind of what it's kind of what I would share on that is just finding ways to, anchor yourself in your spirituality. Like, do the spiritual practices, whether it's prayer, for me, prayer, reading, the scriptures, like reading Holy Writ, serving other people, looking for ways to add value to people, like all of those things. Like, I feel like I have the spirit in my heart, where I have like God's spirit in my decision-making. I have a peace about it. So it's just been critical. It's been foundational in my journey.
Okay. So I want to lean in a little bit on that if I may, and just ask you if you don't mind sharing a time where you really had to lean in and rely on God. Maybe it was a death of a loved one, or maybe it was a relationship that went bad, or a business deal that you got worked out of, or something like that. And we're like, and I'll share real quick with mine. One that comes to mind just off the top of my head. I had a loved one that was, I felt taking advantage of some people that I care very deeply about, and was going to them asking for a lot of money. And I'm just thinking to myself, how can this person do this? Dipping into these people's retirement and, this, that, and the other. And I really had to just like remove myself from the situation. My wife and I, we knelt down and we prayed, and this burden was lifted off of us. And we had a completely different mindset after that. So I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, no, I've been going through just this last month, a really, 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 really challenging time. And it's funny, I called my younger brother, Travis, who's 2 years younger than me. And he was on the phone with my little brother, Brandon, who's 10 years younger than me. And I called him. I said, hey, can you talk? He goes, yeah, because I'm on the phone with Brandon. I said, hey, we'll connect me in. And I kind of caught him up on some of the challenges that I was facing. And my brother, Brandon, he's 10 years younger. He goes, do you mind if I pray for you? And I was like, brother, of course. I was like, I'll take it,
Nice.
And he said the most heartfelt, I was on a walk. I just went out just trying to like kind of pace. He said, gave me the most heartfelt prayer and of encouragement. And it was just so powerful. It was so meaningful to me. And so, that was 3 or 4 weeks ago. So having God in my life, having God in my walk, reminding myself that every breath is a gift. This whole thing's a gift. Has been, like I said, has been instrumental and critical and pivotal in my life.
Prayer can turn the night to day for sure. Um, when was the last time you did something scary, like something that was hard, or maybe what was the most difficult thing that you've ever had to do? And I'm loving this conversation because I can relate very well with you. Like, I felt like coming out of college, I could conquer the world to an extent. Like, I know you said you've never had any college, but for me, I had to humble myself. Like, we got married, my wife and I, we moved in with my parents, which we didn't expect to be very long. We ended up living with them for about 3.5 years or so. And not even like in our own little apartment, but like down the hall from them. So that made for some interesting moments. But and then I'm digging ditches. I'm like, my dad had the best advice, like, as I was kind of like putting out resumes and interviews. He's like, Josh, if I were you, I'd be sweeping the streets if I had to. And that's when I was like, yeah, you're right, Dad. I am gonna go haul junk with my old bishop, and I am gonna go dig ditches at this farm, just really had to, but then it just kind of leveled up and leveled up. But yeah, so scary moments for you, or intimidating, or hardest thing, go, feel free to run with that any direction you want.
Yeah, I mean, God, that list is so long. The first one that kind of came to my little son came to me. He's 11, and it was right before Halloween of this year. And he's like, Dad, let's go to the haunted house. I'm just like, bro, I'm so tired. I don't want to go to the haunted house. And anyway, went through a haunted house, and he was just terrified every turn, and I was like, I just remember thinking like that, how scary that was for him. Just that, by the end of it, by the end of it, he's kind of like, okay, I get it now. I get what's going on. And so it's funny how different things create fear for us at different stages of our life, Man, I've had a bunch of them. I've had a bunch of those. Yeah, almost too many to list. I mean, I remember when that first business failed, just sat there, tears rolling down my face, like felt like the biggest failure. And, I had to remind myself that failure is not a person, it's an event. And that failure is not final, it's fertilizer. And your success will grow in the fertilizer of failure. You just remind yourself like, this is all part of the process. So many of those different moments that create that realization that, the fear that you're facing is just all part of, it's all part of the journey. It's just all part of the plan,
Yeah. I think about maybe I served my mission in Los Angeles for my church. And I remember those like first few months were just so rough, right? Like every day you're like, I want to go home. I want to go home. This sucks. This sucks. Rejection sucks. And but you kind of just power through it. And it's kind of like you're saying, it's just like you build on it every day, you get a little bit better and get a little bit closer to your time to go home and all of that. But one thing I also wanted to mention, you said your son, he came to you, he's like, hey, Dad, can we go to this haunted house? And you're like, oh, dude, I'm so tired. No, but you ended up going. I love that, because it sends a message. And I'm trying to be more intentional. If like my kids are like, hey, can we go jump on the trampoline? I just like instantly try and jump up and go instead of like, oh, I'm tired. I just got home. I need a minute. So I love that, you're a living example of just like, hey, I'm going to do hard things, even if they're not super hard, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, awesome. I know you've got something coming up here, so I want to be mindful of your time and not take you too long. But with the holidays approaching, I'll ask you this, and then I'll let you go. Do you guys have any holiday traditions in the Prince family that are like every year we got to do this? Maybe it's a movie you watch or meals you guys create.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that the supper Santa we've been doing now for a number of years, and that's become kind of a tradition in the family. The kids really look forward to it, and and then just the time we are away from family. We live about 4 hours south of family, and so we've created these kind of traditions that are just basically our families, like specifically traditions. And I feel like those have been really meaningful and really impactful. But I think the main thing we try and focus the kids on and focus ourselves on is just that the secret to living is giving. So it's in other words, it's not just about what you get, it's about what you give and who you are being in the process. And so that's, I think, the really main thing we try and focus on through the holidays is just how can we serve and basically lighten the load for someone else versus like what presents are we going to get, or
Yeah.
what's the holiday experience going to be for us.
Totally. I love that. Yeah, what you're sharing there, it reminds me, like, we tell our kids pretty frequently, we're like, hey, it's not all about you, like, oh, I don't want to go to church, or I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, it's not all about you. And I think what the remarks you just shared kind of sum that up really well.
That's awesome.
You're trying to build up your kids into creating a better life for themselves, more character. That's awesome. Well, hey, Justin, hey, how can people find you if they're looking for you? If they've loved hearing this, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to iamjustinprince.com. You can go all across social media, whether it's Justin Prince or I am Justin Prince. And, my book is all across all platforms. So whether it's Amazon or wherever you get your favorite books, the book's called Be the One, and it's a book that will absolutely change your life. It's a book that each chapter is designed to stack upon the last chapter, to where your life is changing with each chapter as you're applying the different concepts and principles that you're learning.
Awesome. Well, hey, Justin, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here with us, and look forward to hearing about your future successes.
Thank you, brother. Great to be with you, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Real quick, I want to say thank you for tuning in, and also ask for a favor. If you enjoyed the show, I'd ask that you would hit the subscribe button. It helps us scale the guests. It helps us grow the production. And if you really enjoyed it, please consider donating to the show by finding me on Venmo at Josh-Pratt. That's at JOSH-PRATT. I will repay your kind gesture by making sure that this show gets better and better. Thank you so much.